It was a quiet, uneventful Wednesday afternoon at the local grocery store in Los Angeles. The kind of day where nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and life moved along at its usual pace. Shoppers wandered through the aisles, picking up items for dinner or grabbing snacks for later. The air inside the store was cool, filled with the faint hum of refrigerators and the occasional beep of a barcode scanner. Everything appeared calm, but sometimes beneath the surface of everyday routines, small storms can brew without warning. Tasha Bennett was one of those shoppers. A hard-working single mother in her early 30s, Tasha had spent most of her adult life juggling responsibilities. Between working 2 jobs, early mornings as a barista and late nights cleaning offices, and raising her 6-year-old son, Marcus, she rarely had time to breathe. Her days were long, exhausting, and often thankless, but Tasha didn't complain. She did what she had to do because that's what mothers like her did. They kept moving forward no matter how heavy the weight on their shoulders felt. That afternoon, Tasha had taken a short break from her busy schedule to visit the grocery store. It wasn't something she looked forward to. Shopping always felt like another chore added to her endless list. But today, she wanted to make sure she had everything she needed to cook a decent meal for Marcus when he got home from school. He loved her spaghetti, and after weeks of surviving on instant noodles and frozen dinners, she thought it would be nice to give him something warm and homemade. Plus, it was a chance for her to spend some quality time with him, even if it was just over plates of food at the kitchen table. As Tasha pushed her cart down the aisles, she carefully studied prices, calculating which items fit within her tight budget. She picked up a loaf of bread, a pack of pasta, and a jar of marinara sauce, all staples she could stretch into multiple meals. Occasionally, she glanced at the more expensive products, imagining what it might feel like to shop without worrying about every penny. But reality quickly pulled her back, and she reminded herself that being frugal meant keeping a roof over their heads and food on the table. While Tasha focused on her task, she didn't notice 3 teenagers lingering nearby. They stood by the cereal aisle, laughing loudly and tossing empty snack bags into the air. Their energy was chaotic, the kind that made other shoppers glance nervously in their direction before hurrying away. One of them wore a hoodie pulled low over his face, while another carried a skateboard under his arm. The third teenager, clearly the ringleader, had a smug grin plastered across his face, as if he thrived on causing trouble wherever he went. At first, Tasha paid them little mind. Teenagers hanging out at the grocery store wasn't unusual, and she assumed they'd eventually leave once they grew bored. But then, their laughter turned into whispers, sharp enough for her to overhear fragments of their conversation. "Look at her shoes," one of them snickered, pointing at Tasha's worn-out sneakers. Another chimed in, "Bet she shops here every day looking for deals." Their voices carried just loud enough for her to catch, and though she tried to ignore them, their words stung. Tasha tightened her grip on the handle of her cart, forcing herself to stay composed. She knew better than to engage with bullies, especially ones who were younger and likely looking for a reaction. Still, their comments hit close to home. Her sneakers weren't designer brands or shiny new purchases. They were practical, durable, and affordable, chosen because they lasted longer than cheaper alternatives. To her, they represented careful decisions made out of necessity, not laziness or lack of effort. Yet hearing these strangers mock something so trivial hurt more than she cared to admit. The teasing continued as Tasha moved further down the aisle. When she reached for a box of cereal, one of the teens deliberately bumped into her cart, sending the box tumbling onto the floor. His friends erupted into laughter, doubling over as if it were the funniest thing they'd ever seen. Tasha bent down to pick up the cereal, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She could feel eyes on her, not just from the teenagers, but also from other shoppers pretending not to notice. Some shook their heads disapprovingly, while others simply walked past, unwilling to get involved. Despite the growing tension, Tasha refused to let the situation escalate. She straightened up, placed the cereal back in her cart, and took a deep breath. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't solve anything, and giving the bullies the satisfaction of seeing her upset was the last thing she wanted. Instead, she reminded herself why she was there. to take care of Marcus, to provide for him, and to show him that strength came from staying calm in difficult situations. Unbeknownst to Tasha, someone else had been watching the entire scene unfold. Standing a few feet away, partially hidden behind a display of canned goods, was Vin Diesel. Dressed casually in jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face, he blended in with the crowd. At first glance, he looked like any other shopper enjoying a lazy afternoon. But anyone familiar with his presence would recognize the unmistakable aura of confidence and authority he carried, even when trying to remain inconspicuous. Vin hadn't planned on stepping foot in the grocery store that day. He'd been driving through the neighborhood, running errands during a rare break from filming. After grabbing a quick lunch at a nearby cafe, he decided to stop by the store to pick up snacks for the evening. It was supposed to be a simple, mundane trip, a chance to unwind before diving back into the whirlwind of his career. Little did he know that fate had other plans. As Vin browsed the aisles, he couldn't help but overhear the commotion coming from the cereal section. At first, he dismissed it as typical teenage antics, kids horsing around, probably harmless. But when he saw the way they were treating Tasha, his instincts kicked in. Growing up in New York City, Vin had witnessed plenty of bullying and injustice. He understood what it felt like to be singled out, to be judged based on appearances or circumstances beyond your control. And while he may have achieved fame and success, he never forgot where he came from, or the importance of standing up for those who couldn't defend themselves. When the leader of the group knocked the cereal box into Tasha's cart, Vin's jaw tightened. He watched as she stooped to retrieve it, her movements deliberate yet tinged with vulnerability. The sight stirred something deep within him, a mix of anger and empathy. These kids weren't just playing around. They were targeting someone who clearly had enough challenges to deal with already. Without hesitation, Vin made up his mind. He wasn't going to stand idly by and let this happen. Not on his watch. Vin Diesel didn't rush into the situation recklessly. Instead, he took a moment to observe the dynamics of the group, sizing up the teenagers and gauging their behavior. He knew that confrontation could escalate quickly if not handled carefully, especially with young people who might be looking for an excuse to act out further. But Vin also understood that sometimes all it took to diffuse tension was the presence of someone willing to step in, someone who wouldn't back down. The first thing Vin did was adjust his stance. He straightened his posture, standing tall and confident, his broad shoulders making him appear even more imposing than usual. His baseball cap still shielded part of his face, but there was no mistaking the intensity in his eyes. Quietly, he moved closer to the scene, positioning himself between Tasha and the bullies without drawing too much attention to himself at first. He wanted them to notice him on their own terms, when they realized just how serious he was about intervening. As he approached, one of the teenagers glanced in his direction, then quickly looked away, dismissing him as just another random shopper. But when Vin stopped directly behind Tasha's cart, his towering figure impossible to ignore, the group finally turned their full attention toward him. The leader of the trio, the one with the smug grin, narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "What are you staring at?" he called out, his voice laced with bravado. His friends snickered nervously, unsure whether this stranger was someone worth provoking or not. Vin didn't respond immediately. Instead, he folded his arms across his chest and gave the boy a long, steady look. It wasn't aggressive, but it carried a weight that demanded respect. When he finally spoke, his deep voice cut through the air like a blade. "I'm staring at 3 kids who think it's funny to make fun of someone minding their own business," he said calmly, though every word dripped with authority. The teenagers faltered, caught off guard by both the tone and the content of his statement. For a brief moment, silence fell over the aisle, broken only by the distant hum of the store's fluorescent lights. The leader of the group tried to recover his composure, forcing a smirk onto his face. "Mind your own business, dude," he shot back, attempting to sound tough. But even as he spoke, his confidence wavered. There was something about Vin's demeanor, his calmness mixed with an undeniable strength, that made it clear he wasn't someone to be trifled with. One of the other teens whispered something under his breath, nudging his friend as if to suggest they should leave before things got worse. But the leader wasn't ready to back down just yet. "Oh yeah? And what are you going to do about it?" he challenged, taking a half step forward. His attempt to seem fearless fell flat, however, when Vin simply raised an eyebrow and stared him down. Without saying a word, Vin shifted slightly, placing himself squarely between the bullies and Tasha. His body language sent a clear message: "You're not getting past me." The teenagers exchanged uneasy glances, suddenly realizing they were outnumbered, not just by Vin, but also by the growing number of bystanders who had started to gather around, curious about what was happening. One of the teens muttered something sarcastic, trying to save face, but it lacked conviction. Vin ignored the comment and addressed the leader directly. "Listen," he said, his voice firm but measured. "You've got two choices here. You can either walk away now and forget this ever happened, or you can keep going and deal with the consequences. Your call." The simplicity of his words struck a nerve. There was no yelling, no theatrics, just a straightforward ultimatum delivered with absolute certainty. It left no room for misinterpretation. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The leader hesitated, his earlier cockiness crumbling under Vin's unwavering gaze. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he let out a frustrated huff and gestured for his friends to follow him. "Whatever, man," he muttered, turning on his heel and storming off. His companions trailed behind him, casting nervous looks over their shoulders as they retreated. Within moments, the group disappeared around the corner, their loud voices fading into the background as they exited the store. As soon as the teenagers were gone, the tension in the aisle began to dissipate. Shoppers who had been watching from a distance slowly returned to their tasks, some shaking their heads in disapproval while others offered quiet nods of approval to Vin. A couple of people clapped softly, acknowledging his intervention, but Vin paid little attention to the acknowledgement. His focus remained on Tasha, who still stood frozen beside her cart, gripping the handle tightly. She hadn't said a word throughout the entire exchange, too overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events to react. Vin turned to her, his expression softening instantly. He removed his sunglasses, revealing warm, empathetic eyes that contrasted sharply with the stern look he'd worn moments earlier. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his deep voice now filled with concern rather than authority. Tasha blinked, as if snapping out of a trance, and nodded weakly. "Yeah, I'm fine," she managed to say, though her voice trembled slightly. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do." Vin gave her a reassuring smile, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to thank me," he said sincerely. "No one deserves to be treated like that, especially not someone working hard to take care of their family." His words hit home, resonating deeply with Tasha. She looked up at him, tears welling in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly, determined not to cry in front of a stranger, even one who had just come to her rescue. I try to ignore stuff like that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But sometimes it's hard." Vin nodded understandingly. "I get it," he replied. "It's not easy being strong all the time, but you're doing great. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His encouragement brought a small, grateful smile to Tasha's face, though she still seemed shaken by the encounter. Seeing her vulnerability, Vin decided to stick around for a bit longer. "Do you mind if I help you finish your shopping?" he offered, gesturing toward her cart. "Just to make sure everything's good?" Tasha hesitated for a moment, surprised by the unexpected kindness. "That's really nice of you," she said, "but you don't have to." Vin cut her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "It's no trouble," he assured her. "Besides, it's always better to have backup when dealing with unruly kids." With that, the two began walking through the aisles together, side by side. Vin pushed the cart while Tasha picked out the remaining items she needed, occasionally explaining why she chose certain products over others. At first, their conversation was awkward, limited to polite exchanges about groceries and prices. But as they continued, Tasha found herself opening up more. She told Vin about her job as a barista, her late-night cleaning shifts, and the challenges of raising Marcus on her own. Vin listened intently, nodding along and offering words of encouragement whenever she paused. In return, Vin shared bits and pieces of his own life, talking about his childhood in New York City and how he'd faced his share of struggles growing up. He spoke about the importance of resilience, emphasizing that everyone goes through tough times but that those experiences shape us into stronger individuals. His humility and relatability put Tasha at ease, and by the time they reached the checkout counter, she felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. As they waited in line, Vin noticed Tasha glancing at the candy aisle wistfully. "Go ahead," he urged, nodding toward the colorful display. "Grab something sweet for yourself, you deserve it." Tasha laughed softly, shaking her head. "I shouldn't," she said. "I'm trying to save money." Vin grinned. "Come on," he insisted. "Life's too short not to treat yourself once in a while." Reluctantly, Tasha wandered over to the aisle and selected a small chocolate bar, holding it up triumphantly when she returned. "Happy now?" she teased, earning a chuckle from Vin. By the time they finished paying for their items, Tasha felt like a different person. The earlier humiliation and frustration had faded, replaced by a sense of gratitude and renewed hope. As they stepped outside the store, Vin helped her load her bags into her car, refusing to let her lift anything heavy. Before parting ways, he handed her his personal card. "If you ever need anything, groceries, advice, or just someone to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out," he told her sincerely. Tasha accepted the card with wide eyes, overwhelmed by the gesture. "Thank you," she said again, her voice thick with emotion. "This means so much." Vin smiled warmly, giving her a slight nod. "Take care of yourself and Marcus," he added. "You're doing amazing." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Tasha standing there, clutching the card and feeling like maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't such a bad place after all. After ensuring Tasha was safe and the bullies were long gone, Vin Diesel didn't simply walk away. Instead, he stayed by her side, offering not just protection but also companionship as she finished her shopping. It wasn't an act of charity or pity. It was a genuine effort to make sure she felt supported after what had happened. For Tasha, this small gesture meant more than Vin could have realized. After years of struggling alone, carrying the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, having someone step in like this felt almost surreal. As they moved through the aisles together, Vin pushed the cart while Tasha picked out the remaining items she needed. At first, their conversation was light and practical, discussing which vegetables looked freshest, debating whether generic brands were worth the savings, and sharing tips on how to stretch a grocery budget. But as they continued, the dialogue naturally shifted to deeper topics. Tasha opened up about her life, explaining the challenges of being a single mother working 2 jobs. She spoke candidly about the sacrifices she made for Marcus, from skipping meals so he'd have enough to eat to missing out on social events because she was too tired or couldn't afford them. Vin listened intently, nodding along and occasionally chiming in with words of encouragement. "You're doing incredible," he said at one point, his voice full of sincerity. "Not everyone would handle everything you've been through with such grace." Tasha smiled faintly, though there was still a hint of sadness in her eyes. "It's not always easy," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing him, you know? Like no matter how hard I try, it's never enough." Vin shook his head firmly. "Don't think that way," he told her. "You're giving Marcus something far more valuable than money: love, stability, and resilience. Those are things that last a lifetime." His words struck a chord with Tasha. She had spent so much time focusing on what she lacked that she hadn't stopped to appreciate what she did provide for her son. Hearing Vin validate her efforts gave her a renewed sense of purpose, even if only for a moment. In turn, Vin shared parts of his own story. He talked about growing up in New York City, where diversity was everywhere but acceptance wasn't always guaranteed. As a child of mixed heritage, he often found himself caught between different worlds, never quite fitting into any one box. He described the bullying he endured as a kid, the name-calling, the teasing, the feeling of being an outsider. and how those experiences shaped him into the person he is today. "I know what it's like to be judged based on things you can't control," he said quietly. "And I know how lonely it can feel when it seems like no one understands." Tasha listened closely, her heart swelling with empathy. Here was someone who, despite his fame and success, still carried the scars of his past. Yet instead of letting those experiences harden him, Vin had used them as fuel to become a better person, to stand up for others who might not have a voice. "That's why I couldn't just walk away earlier," he explained. "Seeing those kids treat you like that, it brought back memories I didn't want to relive, and I knew I had to do something." Their connection deepened as they talked, each finding solace in the other's understanding. By the time they reached the checkout counter, Tasha felt less like a victim of circumstance and more like someone capable of overcoming adversity. Vin's presence, and his willingness to share his own vulnerabilities, had reminded her that she wasn't alone. There were people in the world who cared, even if they were strangers passing through her life for just a brief moment. While waiting in line, Vin noticed Tasha glancing wistfully at the candy aisle. Her gaze lingered on the colorful wrappers and shiny packages, but she quickly turned away, shaking her head slightly. "Go ahead," Vin urged, nudging her playfully. "Grab something sweet for yourself. You deserve it." Tasha hesitated, glancing at the items in her cart. "I shouldn't," she murmured. "I'm trying to save money." Vin chuckled softly, leaning against the cart. "Life's too short not to indulge once in a while," he said. "Besides, you've earned it, trust me." Reluctantly, Tasha wandered over to the aisle and selected a small chocolate bar, holding it up triumphantly when she returned. "Happy now?" she teased, earning a warm laugh from Vin. "Very," he replied with a grin. "See? That wasn't so hard, was it?" The simple act of buying herself a treat, a luxury she rarely allowed, felt monumental. It wasn't about the chocolate itself. It was about permission. Permission to take care of herself, to acknowledge that she mattered too. Vin's insistence on this small indulgence reinforced the idea that self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary. And for Tasha, that realization was priceless. Once they finished paying for their groceries, Vin accompanied Tasha to her car, helping her load the bags into the trunk. Despite her protests, he insisted on lifting the heavier items, refusing to let her strain herself. "You've already done enough heavy lifting today," he joked, earning another grateful smile from Tasha. As they stood beside the car, the late afternoon sun casting golden hues across the parking lot, Vin handed her his personal card. Written neatly on the front was his name, phone number, and email address. "If you ever need anything, groceries, advice, or just someone to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out," he said sincerely. Tasha stared at the card, her fingers trembling slightly as she held it. I don't know what to say," she stammered, overwhelmed by the kindness of a stranger who could have easily walked away without a second thought. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough." Vin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his expression soft yet resolute. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "But promise me one thing. You'll take care of yourself. You're doing amazing. Work raising Marcus, but you can't pour from an empty cup, remember that." Tasha nodded, tears welling in her eyes but refusing to fall. She tucked the card carefully into her pocket, vowing to keep it safe. Before leaving, Vin gave her one final piece of advice. "And hey," he added with a wink, "next time someone tries to bring you down, remember this. Superheroes aren't just in movies. Sometimes they're right here in real life." With that, he stepped back, waving goodbye as he walked toward his own vehicle. Tasha watched him go, her heart swelling with gratitude and admiration. In that moment, she realized that heroes weren't defined by capes or special powers. They were ordinary people who chose to act with extraordinary courage and compassion. As she drove home, Tasha replayed the day's events in her mind. The humiliation, the fear, the anger. All of it had been overshadowed by the unexpected kindness of a man who reminded her that humanity still existed in its purest form. Vin Diesel hadn't just defended her from bullies. He had restored her faith in the goodness of strangers. And for Tasha, that was a gift worth far more than anything money could buy. Days turned into weeks after that fateful afternoon at the grocery store, but Tasha Bennett couldn't shake the memory of Vin Diesel's kindness. It wasn't just the fact that he had intervened when she needed help. It was the way he had treated her with such genuine care and respect. He didn't see her as a victim or someone to pity. Instead, he saw her as a strong, resilient woman doing her best in difficult circumstances. That small interaction planted a seed of inspiration in Tasha's mind, one that would grow into something much bigger than she ever expected. At first, life returned to its usual rhythm. Tasha continued juggling her 2 jobs, waking up before sunrise to start her shift as a barista, and ending her days cleaning offices late into the night. She cooked meals for Marcus, helped him with his homework, and tucked him into bed each evening, just like always. But something inside her had shifted. The encounter with Vin had reminded her of the power of compassion and the importance of standing up for others even when it seemed easier to look away. She began thinking about how she could pay forward the kindness she'd received. One evening, while scrolling through social media during a rare break, Tasha came across a post from a local community center. They were looking for volunteers to mentor single parents and provide support to families in need. Intrigued, she clicked on the link and read more about their programs. The center offered workshops on budgeting, parenting tips, and stress management, along with counseling services and recreational activities for children. It was exactly the kind of resource Tasha wished she'd had access to during her toughest moments as a young mother. Without hesitation, Tasha filled out an application to volunteer. A few days later, she received a call inviting her to attend an orientation session. Nervous but excited, she showed up at the center on a Saturday morning, ready to learn how she could contribute. The staff welcomed her warmly, explaining the various roles available and sharing stories of how the program had impacted countless lives. By the end of the meeting, Tasha knew she wanted to become a mentor, a role model for other single mothers navigating similar struggles. Over the next several weeks, Tasha threw herself into her new role with the same determination she brought to everything else in her life. She attended training sessions, participated in group discussions, and shadowed experienced mentors to learn the ropes. When she was finally paired with her first mentee, a young mother named Jasmine who was raising twin toddlers, Tasha felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. Jasmine was only 22 years old, barely older than a child herself, and already overwhelmed by the challenges of parenthood. Like Tasha once had been, she often doubted her abilities and struggled to find balance between work, childcare, and self-care. During their weekly meetings, Tasha shared not only practical advice but also personal anecdotes from her own journey. She told Jasmine about the long nights spent worrying about money, the sacrifices she made for Marcus, and the times she felt like giving up, but didn't. She emphasized the importance of perseverance, reminding Jasmine that she was stronger than she realized. And of course, she recounted the story of her encounter with Vin Diesel, using it as an example of how acts of kindness, no matter how small, could inspire change. Jasmine listened intently, her eyes wide with admiration. "I can't believe someone like Vin Diesel would take time out of his day to help you," she said during one of their sessions. "It's crazy to think about." Tasha smiled, nodding in agreement. "Yeah, it is," she replied. "But what's even crazier is realizing that we all have the power to do the same thing. You don't have to be famous or rich to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is showing up and being there for someone." Inspired by Tasha's words, Jasmine began opening up more, sharing her fears and frustrations without fear of judgment. Together they worked on creating a realistic budget, finding affordable childcare options, and setting achievable goals for the future. Slowly but surely, Jasmine started gaining confidence, learning to trust herself and her ability to provide for her twins. Watching her transformation filled Tasha with pride, not just because she had helped another mother thrive, but because she had discovered a renewed sense of purpose in the process. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Tasha, news of Vin Diesel's actions at the grocery store had begun spreading online. One of the bystanders who witnessed the incident posted about it on social media, describing how the actor had stepped in to defend a stranger from bullies. The post quickly gained traction, garnering thousands of likes, shares, and comments from fans around the world. People praised Vin for using his platform to stand up against injustice, calling him a real-life hero. Some even joked that they weren't surprised, given his reputation as both an action star and a compassionate human being. When Vin eventually caught wind of the viral post, he chuckled good-naturedly. He had no idea anyone had recorded the moment, let alone shared it publicly. To him, the incident was just another day of living by the principles he believed in, treating others with kindness, standing up for what's right, and leading by example. Still, he appreciated the positive response it generated. In interviews following the buzz, Vin humbly downplayed his role, emphasizing that anyone in his position should have done the same thing. "It's not about me," he said during one appearance. "It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone and refusing to stay silent when people are being mistreated." Despite his modesty, the story resonated deeply with many. Fans flooded social media with messages of gratitude, sharing their own experiences of overcoming adversity, and expressing hope that more public figures would follow Vin's lead. For Tasha, seeing the widespread appreciation for Vin's actions reinforced her belief in the goodness of people. It also reminded her of the ripple effect kindness could create, one act of compassion inspiring countless others. Back at home, Tasha decided to write Vin a heartfelt letter, thanking him not just for defending her that day but for motivating her to give back to her community. She poured her thoughts onto paper, detailing how his intervention had changed her perspective, and encouraged her to become a mentor. "You may not realize it," she wrote, "but your actions have touched so many lives, including mine. Because of you, I've learned that even in our darkest moments, there's always light waiting to shine through." She mailed the letter, along with a photo of Marcus, hoping Vin would understand the impact he'd made. Weeks later, she received a reply. Vin thanked her for reaching out, saying her words meant the world to him. "Knowing that I played a small part in helping you find strength and purpose makes me incredibly proud," he wrote. "Keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference, and that's what truly matters." Reading Vin's response brought tears to Tasha's eyes. It was proof that even fleeting encounters could leave lasting impressions, shaping the course of people's lives in ways they might never fully comprehend. For Tasha, the experience had transformed her from someone merely surviving to someone thriving and inspiring others to do the same. And though she and Vin may never meet again, the bond they formed that day at the grocery store remained a testament to the power of empathy, courage, and connection. Months had passed since that transformative day at the grocery store, and Tasha Bennett's life had taken on a new rhythm, one filled with purpose, growth, and a deep sense of fulfillment. Her decision to volunteer at the community center wasn't just about giving back. It was about creating a ripple effect of kindness, much like the one Vin Diesel had unknowingly sparked in her own life. Every Saturday morning, she walked into the bustling building with a smile, ready to mentor young mothers who were navigating the same uphill battles she once faced. The relationships Tasha built with these women became some of the most meaningful connections she'd ever experienced. Jasmine, her first mentee, had blossomed under her guidance, from struggling to keep up with rent payments to landing a part-time job that allowed her more time with her twins. Jasmine's progress was nothing short of remarkable. She often told Tasha how grateful she was for her support, saying, "You're not just helping me, you're teaching me how to believe in myself again." Hearing those words reminded Tasha of Vin's encouragement during their brief encounter. It wasn't just about solving problems. It was about empowering others to see their own strength. As word spread about Tasha's dedication, more single mothers began seeking her out for advice. Some came for practical tips on budgeting or finding affordable childcare, while others simply wanted someone to listen without judgment. Tasha welcomed them all with open arms, knowing firsthand how isolating parenthood could feel when you didn't have a strong support system. She organized informal coffee meetups where the women could share their stories, laugh together, and lean on one another through the tough times. Slowly but surely, they formed a sisterhood, a network of resilience and hope. But Tasha didn't stop there. Inspired by Vin's humility and his ability to inspire others, she started sharing her story publicly. At first, it was just within the confines of the community center, speaking at workshops or leading discussions about overcoming adversity. But as her confidence grew, So did her audience. Local schools and churches invited her to talk about the importance of perseverance and self-care, especially for parents juggling multiple responsibilities. Each speech began with the same opening line. "I'm not here because I think I'm special. I'm here because someone once showed me that even strangers can change your life." Her talks resonated deeply with listeners, many of whom approached her afterward to express their gratitude. One woman tearfully confessed that hearing Tasha's story gave her the courage to leave an abusive relationship. Another thanked her for reminding her that it was okay to ask for help when things felt overwhelming. These moments reinforced Tasha's belief that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a bridge connecting people to one another. Meanwhile, Vin Diesel continued to receive praise for his actions that day at the grocery store. The viral post had sparked conversations worldwide about celebrity responsibility and the impact of using fame for good. Fans flooded social media with messages thanking him for standing up against bullying and showing compassion in such a genuine way. Memes jokingly referred to him as the real-life superhero popped up everywhere, blending humor with admiration. Yet despite the attention, Vin remained grounded, deflecting credit whenever possible. In interviews, he used the platform to amplify messages of kindness and empathy. "We live in a world where people are quick to judge and slow to understand," he said during one appearance. "But every single one of us has the power to shift that narrative. Whether it's defending someone being bullied or simply offering a kind word, we can all make choices that reflect our humanity." His words resonated with audiences across generations, inspiring countless acts of goodwill in his name. For Tasha, watching Vin's influence grow was both humbling and motivating. She realized that heroes weren't defined by grand gestures or larger-than-life personas. They were ordinary people choosing to act with extraordinary compassion. And though Vin's intervention had been brief, its effects rippled far beyond what either of them could have imagined. It wasn't just about stopping bullies or defending a stranger. It was about planting seeds of change that would continue to grow long after the moment had passed. One evening, as Tasha tucked Marcus into bed, she reflected on how much their lives had transformed since that day. Marcus, now 7 years old, was thriving in school, excelling in math and making friends easily. He often asked about Vin, curious about the man who had stood up for his mom. "Do you think he'll come visit us someday?" Marcus asked sleepily, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Tasha smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Maybe," she replied softly. "But whether he does or not, we'll always carry what he taught us in our hearts." That lesson extended beyond Tasha and Marcus. It reached everyone Tasha touched through her work. The community center flourished, attracting more volunteers and donors eager to support its mission. Jasmine became a mentor herself, passing along the wisdom she'd gained to newer participants. Even the staff credited Tasha with revitalizing the program, saying her energy and passion inspired everyone around her. What had started as a simple act of kindness from Vin had grown into a movement, a testament to the power of paying it forward. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Tasha decided to revisit the grocery store where it all began. Walking through the familiar aisles brought back vivid memories of that tense moment when the bullies mocked her and the relief she felt when Vin stepped in. This time, however, she moved through the space with a newfound sense of peace. She paused by the cereal aisle, smiling faintly as she remembered the box that had tumbled into her cart. Then she made her way to the candy section, picking out a chocolate bar, not for herself this time, but for a fellow mentor at the community center who had been having a tough week. As she stood in line to pay, Tasha noticed a young mother struggling to wrangle her toddler while balancing a cart full of groceries. The child was crying loudly and the mother looked exhausted, clearly overwhelmed. Without hesitation, Tasha approached her. "Can I help you with anything?" she asked gently, offering a reassuring smile. The woman hesitated before nodding gratefully. Together they loaded the items onto the conveyor belt, chatting lightly about the challenges of parenting. Before leaving, Tasha handed her the chocolate bar. "This is for you," she said. "Sometimes we all need a little sweetness to get through the day." The woman's eyes welled with tears as she accepted the gift. "Thank you," she whispered. "I really needed this today." Tasha nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. In that moment, she understood fully what Vin had done for her. Not just defending her from bullies, but reminding her of the goodness in the world. Now she was doing the same for someone else, continuing the cycle of compassion. Later that evening, as Tasha sat at her kitchen table writing in her journal, she thought about how interconnected everything was. Life wasn't perfect. There were still bills to pay, late nights to endure, and moments of doubt, but it was infinitely richer thanks to the lessons she'd learned. She wrote down 3 things she was grateful for that day: Marcus's laughter, the progress she saw in the women she mentored, and the memory of Vin's unwavering kindness. As she closed her notebook, she whispered a silent thank you to Vin, to the universe, and to herself for choosing to rise above adversity and spread light wherever she went. And so, the story came full circle. A chance encounter at a grocery store had set off a chain reaction of positivity, proving that even the smallest acts of courage and compassion could leave an indelible mark on the world. For Tasha, it was proof that heroes walk among us every day, disguised as ordinary people making extraordinary choices. And for Vin, it was a reminder that true legacy isn't measured by fame or fortune. It's measured by the lives we touch and the love we share.